What's up, everyone? We have some big things coming up for the stock market this week. In today's video, we're going to be going over all the important news to know. We have a $1.7 million trade against the real estate market. We also have a week full of some very interesting earnings. So we're also definitely going to cover that. So make sure to stick with us all the way to the end. But Tom, let's get right into today's episode.
Yeah, 100%, Mike. And right now, that SPY took a big tumble to the downside on Friday, and we actually got a big move away from that key $400 area that we were talking about a lot last week. You can see that this price action last week with the SPY pretty much stayed right around 400. You know, it popped up a little bit above 400, fell down a little bit below, but in the end, you know, it was trading right around that level. And on Friday, we got a pretty significant drop down, and the SPY kind of consolidated for the rest of the day after that initial early drop to the downside. And that big drop came from a surprise with the PCE data. And it actually showed that inflation was picking up right now. And we saw some pretty big upticks in percentages on the CME FedWatch tool, more towards 50 basis points. You know, everyone was expecting 25 basis points. Now we're getting a few Fed members actually talking about going up to 50 basis points again. And we might see this translate into the overall market. And obviously the market did not like that and started to fall back down because it's just showing that inflation is just not falling quick enough right now. And if we go to that inflation chart overall, we're obviously seeing inflation drop a lot. But look at this past reading. We only went from 6.5% down to 6.4%. And then on Friday, we just had that bad PCE data. So it's looking like inflation is starting to slow down the pace it's falling at, which means it might actually start to uptick a little bit here, which would be a little bit scary as these next readings start to come in. So be very careful here. You know, we're under 400. We're starting to see a lot of stocks fall down, and all this data is coming in all at one time. Plus, we have these big earnings this week too.
Exactly. So the market's just at a point right now where it's like, just like you were saying, like it's really stuck around this $400 level on SPY. And we're at a point where there's not enough great news to see a true like explosion to the upside. But at the same time, the news isn't bad enough where it's like we're just in free fall. So we're really stuck between this, you know, middle ground, you can say. But one thing that can really bring some extra momentum into the market is earnings this week. So what stocks do we have reporting?
Yeah, we actually have quite a bit this week. I'll tell you, you know, some other weeks were obviously bigger, like whenever Apple and Tesla reported and other stocks like that. But man, there is a ton of growth stocks this week, and even AMC's reporting on Tuesday after close, Oxy on Monday along with Zoom, Norwegian Cruise Lines, Target on Wednesday. We have Wendy's, NIO, Lowe's, Salesforce, Snowflake, and Plug, even Celsius and Splunk. I know a lot of people have been talking about those stocks lately too. Best Buy on Thursday, Kroger, Macy's, Costco, and After Hours, AI, even ChargePoint. I mean, Mike, there's so many this week. Even Nordstrom, Hewlett Packard, or HPE down there. Man, there is so many stocks reporting this week. I can't even name them all.
Well, Tom, I have to ask you, out of them all, what's going to be your favorite?
Yeah, I have to say there's so many here. It's kind of hard, but I'm going to really be watching Salesforce on Wednesday. I think that stock is a bit of an outlier, and they usually have some pretty big swings. I know lately they've been actually ripping to the upside quite a bit. And well, this was actually quite a while ago. That expired. But we have been seeing a big uptrend lately. I'm kind of worried they might start to fall back down, but they are sitting like right on support at 160. So I'll be watching Salesforce very closely personally. What about you?
Let's go back to the chart really quickly. Out of them all, I would have to say Zoom tomorrow after close. Monday after close, Zoom is set to report, and Zoom has been all over the place over the past couple years. This stock has had an amazing ride to the upside and an amazing crash down as well ever since the pandemic hit. But now it's at a point where it's like Zoom is actually a growth stock that has decent fundamentals. and they're not really moving that much. Like they're just stuck at like this like $70 to $80 zone, and honestly, they're just not moving that much. But when you look back throughout history, Zoom has a history of some damn good moves in both directions. So I think Zoom can be a pretty solid earnings report to trade, especially if some momentum kicks in and maybe there's some good guidance or something like that. That can definitely move the stock. But I'll definitely say Zoom is definitely on the top of my earnings list for the week. And what's interesting is if we go back to the earnings calendar again, you're not going to see companies like Apple or Microsoft or Tesla report this week, but you see a lot of other stocks that, are more like the growth stock type stocks, or just, I don't want to call them smaller stocks, but, relative to companies like Apple and Microsoft, some of these stocks are smaller, and sometimes you actually see better moves out of these stocks rather than, like the top blue chip stocks.
Yeah, you definitely do. And even AMC is reporting on Tuesday after close. I know everyone's been talking about that stock again lately. And man, that's going to be a crazy report. We'll probably see this stock move in a crazy way too. Man, it's going to be such a crazy week. There's so many opportunities with these earnings. Let me know if you guys are going to play any of these in the comments below. I honestly don't recommend playing them. It's not usually the smartest thing to do, especially with options. But I do think, though, if you end up winning on them, it can make for some pretty big gains. So let me know which ones you're watching. And if you guys are going to play any, like I said, my favorite one is Salesforce there. But there's a lot, Mike. Like, honestly, I even love AI on Thursday after close. I love Kroger. I like NIO Wednesday before open. Like, there's a lot of favorites here that, we'll go over more as the week goes on.
Yeah, and like everyone always likes to think like you have to, in order to play earnings, you have to buy or sell the stock before the earnings report. But honestly, sometimes there's a lot more opportunity just playing the stock after the earnings report relative to the risks. So like, for example, if you look at Palantir or Netflix or any other stock lately that, has had good earnings continuations, you can get in after the stock reports earnings and still have a great move with sometimes even less volatility and, stress. So always keep that in mind too. You don't always have to buy before the report.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes we see these things really continue up and there's a lot of volatility. So keep them on the radar. And Mike, I will say, there wasn't really too much stuff on like the economic front this week. If we go to like the economic calendar on Monday, we have like some durable goods coming in. There's some pending home sales as we go throughout the week. There's a couple Fed speakers, nothing too crazy. ISM manufacturing PMIs on Wednesday. As we go down, not really too much on Thursday. Friday, we have non-manufacturing PMI there. So, there's a lot of stuff on the radar as far as like earnings and stuff. But on the economic calendar, really, there's not too much, which makes me happy. I feel like that means that maybe we can stick with the overall price action and maybe start to, not have to worry too much about like the PCE data, like we did on Friday, for example, which sent the markets down in a huge way.
So, looking at SPY, I know you talked about that $400 level a ton. What other major levels are there for the week?
Yeah, so we got to actually go out here pretty far to kind of see like where some of these bigger supports are on the SPY. And I will say on Friday, when we fell down, we fell right down to a major support level right around 393.50 to 394. There has been multiple bounces right there. And I'm not surprised that the market slowed down there. I'm sure there was a lot of orders and a lot of buyers trying to buy the market up there as it was probably overextended on the day too, at that low. But if we end up breaking below that, Mike, that's going to end up being a pretty big area of support. So I could see a bigger move down to maybe 390 after we break below 393.50. So 390 and 389 are some pretty big levels. We've seen multiple bounces around there as well. So I'm going to be watching both of those levels very carefully to the downside. Now, if we do start to go back up, we need to kind of watch the levels from last week. We need to watch 398 as a nice upper resistance, and then even 400. If we get above 400, then watch 402. But I'll be honest, I think that's going to be a pretty big resistance. And with that bad news Friday, we're going to have to see some pretty good earnings on Monday to get up through this, I think.
All right, sounds good. So let's get into some setups for tomorrow. One stock I'm watching pretty closely is actually Square, or AKA Block. And they reported earnings on Friday, and initially they ran up, but it was just kind of like it like ran up, but not with too much momentum. Either way, they have some pretty big resistance right around that $78 level, and they also have resistance at that $81 level. So, if it breaks above 78, it could be a good scalp play, and if it breaks above 81, we might see an earnings continuation out of this one.
Yeah, I think we definitely could. And I think Square kind of got mistreated on Friday, because we had that bad PCE data come in pre-market and they were looking really good in after hours. And then once the market opened up Monday morning, they just kind of sold off with everything else. So hopefully they can start to move back up this week and do a little bit better. And, maybe those earnings will end up coming to fruition a little bit more. One I'm watching is going to be Walmart. I think Walmart, they also reported earnings, Mike, except theirs did not go as well. They actually initially fell off, and then the very next day they kind of ripped back up. Now they've been trading lower. I'm actually really worried about Walmart falling down here in the short term. They're at a huge support around 139 to 140. I went ahead and marked it down here. There's multiple bounces at that level. And if we go out to a daily chart, Walmart's actually pretty overextended to the upside. So I will be watching this very closely for a potential breakdown. Now, if we do end up bouncing off of that support and going up, I wouldn't mind playing Walmart to the upside, but I'll probably just look at a different stock up at that point. But the main thing I'm watching is that big support.
Alrighty, another stock I'm watching pretty closely is Beyond Meat, so BYND. This stock had a super volatile day on Friday when they reported earnings. Initially, they ran all the way up to like $22.50, and they fell like all the way down to like $18.50. And the day before they closed right around like $17 or so. So it's been all over the place over like the past couple days. And I'm definitely expecting a volatile day, when the market opens tomorrow. And the thing is, I think this stock can go either way. So if it breaks below the $18.50 support, looks like we might see a breakdown with it. So then it'd be more of a bearish play. But on the other hand, if it can hold support and maybe break above, that resistance at like $20, that could be pretty good for like an upside, like maybe even continuation play. So this one has two possible ways to go, but I gave levels, so keep a close eye on it.
Yeah, and I think this is a great way. If we start to fall back down, that could be an awesome move down below that support there. And same thing to the upside. So I like it, Mike. And, for all the scalpers and day traders out there, this should be a pretty good setup if you're looking to catch a trade that, maybe can play out for like an hour or two. You don't have to hold this one forever if it starts to break out. But another one I really like, Mike, is UVXY. I will say we've talked about this one quite a bit the past couple weeks. And with that PCE data coming in worse on Friday like it did, I'm going to be very watchful on UVXY. I think that we could see more downwards momentum in the market. The SPY is starting to fall below 400. And if we do see that continuation down, UVXY is going to be one of the better stocks to watch. Now, I even like UVXY because I think that VIX right now is in a very crazy setup. If we go to the daily chart of VIX, there's been multiple bounces off of this lower trend line, and we're kind of in another wedge pattern here. And once again, that trend line is posting up as a very nice level of support. So if we do start to see VIX start to, move back up and maybe start to test the top of this trend line, it'll make for a pretty good opportunity up. So I will be watching that and maybe acquiring some UVXY shares over the next couple of weeks as VIX starts to maybe consolidate a little more.
Yeah, if the market starts to fall off a little bit, VIX and UVXY can definitely move to the upside in a pretty big way. So I definitely like that setup you're watching, and I'll keep a close eye on it as well. But it is now time for the momentum plays. With today's first one, we have AMD to the downside.
Yeah, we play AMD all the time, and I'll tell you, to the downside, looks like a pretty good play this week, and there's a big support right around 77 even. So if we break below that, go ahead and watch for some puts to the downside.
All right, with the next one, we have RCL also to the downside.
Royal Caribbean, I'm a little bit sad this one keeps falling off, Mike. I was hoping these stocks would start to go up a little bit more here, but go ahead and make them break down below Elon's favorite number, $69 even.
With the next one, we have Microsoft, and that's to the upside.
MSFT, yeah, there's actually a pretty good intraday resistance right around, I would say right around 249.80 to 250. Just make him break above 250. I think that'll be a really good resistance.
All right, sounds good. Well, it's now time for my favorite part of the video, and that is the big money trade of the day. We had $1.75 million go into the VNQ 80 strike put options that expire on September 15th of 2023. So basically VNQ is a real estate ETF, and we have someone betting $1.75 million that this real estate ETF is going to take a decent hit by September. And honestly, it makes sense. Over the past couple of months, we actually saw the biggest dollar value drop in the real estate market since 2008. So that's pretty, it's worth noting. You can say that. And at the same time, if we look at like TNX or just like any US Treasury yield, yields have been popping, and so have mortgage rates. And the yields are not going to slow down anytime soon. It's not like we're going to see mortgage rates go back to the level that they were at in 2020 and 2021. They're going to stay elevated for some time, 100%. So, with that being said, when you have increases in, mortgages that quickly, it definitely has an impact on the real estate market, and we've already been seeing that. But anyways, this trade is basically betting that VNQ is going to tank down to, the lower the better for this trade. The lower it goes down, the more millions they'll make, but they want VNQ at bare minimum below $80 just for these options to have any value. For my viewers out there who don't understand options, this is just basically a trade where the big money's betting that VNQ is going to tank down a decent amount by September 15th of 2023.
Yeah, this is a pretty crazy trade. I will say, given their strike, it does worry me a little bit that they might be shorting it. But man, with the way the housing market's been going lately, I would not be surprised if this came down and maybe even retested like 75 down here, like around that major support, or maybe even 72. There's a lot of big supports coming up on VNQ, and I feel like that it could definitely fall down and test that. Like you said, the real estate market's been taking a big hit lately, and man, I have a lot of family members who deal with this as far as like loans and, real estate agents and loan officers and stuff like that. And I've been hearing a lot of bad stuff lately. So hopefully it turns around, especially coming off of such a hot, like COVID, like that was insane. The real estate market was booming, and now it's like the exact opposite direction now.
Yeah, so we will see. I'll definitely keep a close eye on this one because it's very interesting. All right, Tom. So going into the week, I think earnings are going to be the biggest thing in focus, you can say. I think we're going to see a lot of big moves in both directions out of this group of stocks, and I'm very excited to see how it plays out. Do you have any final thoughts going into the week?
Yeah, it's going to be a crazy one. I'm really hoping the SPY can just start to pick a solid direction. Last week was actually very, very choppy. Besides for Friday, where we got that big move down with PCE data, which was all mostly in pre-market, by the way, so it was hard to play it. For the most part, it was very choppy. We just saw SPY continuing to bounce off support and bounce off resistance and pretty much stay within the range that I circled here. So I don't know. I just hope to see some better price action this week. And I think that some of these earnings will be very, very fun for the stock market. So tomorrow we have ZM and Oxy reporting in after hours. Those are going to be some pretty big ones to watch, especially Zoom and Oxy. Like those two stocks have been crazy the past couple of years.
Yeah, you know it. All right, well, we're excited for the week. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. When you subscribe, you see our videos recommended to you more often. And also, I want to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Rolla, who's been in the StockedUp Discord for 2.5 years now. So it's awesome to see that you're still very strong and active in the community, even after 2.5 years. So thank you for everything, and huge shout out to you. Besides that, guys, let's have an amazing week.